All right, so this is your section 5 notes for chapter 1 in biology. I'm going to try and make this video pretty short because you got plenty of stuff to do today in class. You need to make sure once you're done with the video here, you take your notes quiz and then you do a homework quiz associated with section 5. Use your resources appropriately for that. But also, when you're done, you're going to do a vocab practice. So you should have plenty of stuff to do. These notes won't take very long. You'll have time to get it done. So your objectives, we're going to talk about the importance of biology and making informed decisions. Again, some people would question, well, why do I have to take biology in order to graduate from high school, right? Understand a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, right, are actually frequently brought up in everyday life in terms of different laws that are presented in this country. And if you don't really understand what's going on with living things, it's really hard to make those decisions and make informed decisions. Like, it's easy to say that a certain age restriction is not fair until you realize that human brain development doesn't actually finish until your early 20s, in which case it becomes completely logical to make a law to prevent the hindrance of that development. So I assume you guys know what I'm talking about, but it is really important that you guys understand some of the basic things we're going to talk about in biology in order to make informed decisions in the future, right? You're going to have to vote on things that relate to what we're going to talk about. And you're not supposed to vote on things that you don't understand. You shouldn't have an opinion if you don't understand it. So that's basically what we're here for. But otherwise, we're going to summarize the benefits and risks of the application of biotechnology, and then we're going to talk about how advances in technology might affect the future of biology. So a lot of these things actually just need you to use your book and come up with something. This you don't need a book for. You could answer this question off the top of your head. But I'm not really going to go through answers for this because this is one of the responses I want on your notes quiz, because it can actually give me an idea of what issues really matter to you, right? So if there's a health issue that you have some connection with that you would like to know more about, that would be a good question to ask here, right? That would be a good topic to throw in this portion of that quiz, right? So you can't really have wrong answers for this. I just kind of want to see what you guys think. What's a health issue that matters to you that you think biology could help you better understand, right? Chances are we might hit on that throughout the year. Otherwise, in terms of definitions, we do have this biotechnology definition in this section. Understand that's the beneficial use of a living thing or biological processes. Any kind of technology is just making your life easier some way, somehow. Understand that there are a lot of different examples of biotechnology. Some are high tech, some are low tech, right? So if you were in your book and you looked on page 26, right, when you're scrolling through, right, those book sections online, right, some examples of biotechnology, I can give you a few here, right? Low tech, we use microorganisms to make things like bread and cheese, right? I don't know why that didn't pop out of my brain very fast, but you can make bread and cheese with microorganisms. That's very low tech, right? But it does benefit us because it gives us tasty treats, right? In this case, apparently, right? Whereas higher tech, right? The picture on page 26 shows a bioreactor that's using algae to make hydrogen gas that can be used as a fuel, right? So I could create that fuel that I can burn to power something using that living thing, that algae. So, right, there's lots of different examples of biotechnologies. I just would need a couple listed in here. Right? I'm sure you could come up with a few of your own if I asked you for some. Otherwise, this transgenic, definition specifically, right? This is talking about organisms that have genes from a different species, right? This specific example, right? Right, if you pop back to biotechnology here, in the book it talks about how there are actually some bacteria that we've transplanted human genes into so that they would make us insulin so we can treat diabetics, right? Actually used to be we would use insulin from other animals that were similar to us, so we would use like sheep insulin to treat somebody with diabetes. But now we actually give people human insulin, but we don't get it from a human, we get it from a bacterial culture that just basically they're just grown so that we could harvest that insulin at the end of the day. So it should be that, something like that is getting cheaper and cheaper, but for whatever reason, insulin is really, really expensive. So hopefully through continued advancements in this area, you can make that a little bit cheaper to help people out. Now, is it cheap or is it expensive because it's expensive to make, or is it because people want to make money? That's a different question. But transgenic organisms, that specific example I just used, the bacteria that has human DNA in it, that's what we're talking about when we say transgenic. Otherwise, the book jumps into benefits and risks, ethical considerations even, right, for a lot of these biotechnologies that we use. Just make sure you understand that there are benefits, obviously, to any given technology, but those risks pop up as well. So all of those things that we listed previous are benefits that you could put, right, for biotechnology. Obviously, it's kind of nice to be able to have bread and cheese to eat and to get fuel and to have insulin. But the risks, on the other hand, right, might be a little bit harder to look up. So some of the risks that are associated with biotechnology specifically, right? One listed in the book, they talk about GMOs, right? A lot in the news, right? Genetically modified organisms, right? You may question whether that GMO is safe to eat. So that's a risk associated with biotechnology, right? I genetically modified this plant to be resistant to insects, or maybe to resist some sort of herbicide that I'm going to use to knock out all the weeds around it, right? But is it safe to eat when it's all said and done? Generally speaking, yes, right? There aren't really a whole lot of evidence of a lot of the GMOs that we have that are unsafe. Obviously, we wouldn't do that if it was unsafe. But again, there could be some things that we don't know yet, whether it be harmful or not. So that's something that's always a question, right? But there isn't really a food that you eat that isn't genetically modified some way, somehow. So we're a little bit too far gone in that case to really be worried about it at this point. Other risks, ethical considerations, right? I could use genetic screening to find out if, prenatal screening to find out if that baby's going to have any issues, health issues, right? But at the same time, that seems like a good thing, but it can also have some ethical concerns, because what if it is going to have health issues? Is that going to influence the decision of the parents as to whether they want to actually have that child or not? So it could actually lead to more abortions and things like that. So again, how much information should we really know, right? Does that living thing deserve a chance to survive, right? Even though it's going to have these health issues, does that mean that it's not worth having, right? That's not a question that I can actually answer for you. That's a question you have to answer for yourself. But it's something that we have to be concerned with to a certain extent. And then we start talking about that genetic modification, like I said before, with transgenic organisms, or even just like modifying genes to pick out traits that we want, right? Is that something that would be appropriate to do with your children, right? What if you wanted your kid to have blue eyes and be 6'5", right? Maybe you could choose that on just a drop down list on a survey someday, right? So that's where like ethical considerations come into play, right? So just have a couple risks, not just the benefits, because all those things we said before, all these biotechnologies, the benefit is clear, right? Having food, fuel, insulin, right? That's actually pretty easy to come up with, but the risks, right, a little bit harder. GMOs, yeah, they're more likely to be insect resistant, maybe they're drought resistant, maybe they're right, whatever. So it's helping us produce more food, but is it ultimately safe to eat? Right? That's the risk side of it. So otherwise, if you need more examples, you can use the book. You can look through that. Finally, we have this last question. And again, this is one that you should be able to come up with an answer for yourself, right? This is basically off of that last main idea on page 27. So if you want to look it up in your book, right, there is technically no wrong answer to this. I just want you to support and explain your answer, right? So whether you say yes or no doesn't even really matter. I want you to support your answer, explain why you think it's yes or no. That's the important part. So you're going to do that in the notes quiz. Use your book if you need to, right? But otherwise, that should be good for these notes today.